Hi, Stuart Box here, and today we're going to look at the installation of our PV lock. And this is a form of serrated clamp that's used for PVC pipe on a bell to spigot connection to hold that together. So we use the components in what we call a PWP, which is a kit, a pack, that consists of the serrated clamps as well as the hardware necessary to install those serrated clamps on a piece of pipe. One thing that's very important, this little tag is not here to make it pretty. It's here to show you the direction in which you're supposed to install this relative to the bell. So it's very important that you pay attention to the orientation of the casting in relationship to the joint. Our serrated clamp is not bidirectional. It's intended to be installed with directionality, meaning the serrations need to face in the right direction. This tag will show you that direction. So I've started the installation now, and I have tightened the clamps in position. A couple of inches on the side of the joint and on the side of the bell should work out. You can see this restraining rod now is loose, but I have a full nut on both ends, which is the most important thing. You want to make sure you get at least a minimum of one thread showing through, but this only needs to be hand tight plus a turn. We're not actually using this restraining rod to pull anything together. The restraining rod, remember, is just going to hold this from coming apart. If you go back to some of the earlier videos that we talked about restraints, we discussed why joints want to come apart. If you think about pressure inside the pipe and a blind flange on the end, and you raise the pressure, if you're not holding that blind flange on, the force inside the pipe, which is related to the pressure becomes force because that pressure is exerted on a flat area, and that flat area then wants to move apart. So if there's a fitting or a flange or something on this end and there's water flowing through here, this joint is trying to come apart. So to hold it together, you simply make serrations on your clamp. When you tighten these nuts, those serrations, their points, dig into the PVC pipe, and these clamps are now fixed in place. Well, just because these clamps are fixed in place doesn't mean that this doesn't come apart. So these restraining rods hold all this from coming apart. That's the purpose of the restraining rods. They're really quite simple to install. I want to point out to you, I mentioned earlier that the little gold tags were there for a reason. They indicate that these little points on the casting should be facing the bell, the joint. So they're actually facing each other. This also gives you a flat surface on the outside for your nut to rest up against the casting so that it's flat. If that nut were, if you're trying to pull that nut down against the tapered surface here, you wouldn't get good compression, and you could cause a point load, which could cause the device to fail. So the direction in which these things are installed is very important. The side bolt clamping torque is very important, and the fact that you hand tighten this assembly is important. If you over tighten, you can preload things where you really don't need to. So we just like to tell people to go hand tight plus a turn with a typical wrench. T-bolt torque is specified on our webpage and our product literature. That is important. And there you have it. Hi, it's Stuart again here with Laurie. Laurie, you got to watch the PWP installation video, and I was wondering if you had any questions.
I have a few questions. Can you explain the product tags on the PWP and why they're important that you were pointing out in the video?
Sure. our serrated clamp has a tooth configuration that is directional. And it's important that that direction of the tooth is pointed at the bell and spigot joint. And also, the flanges themselves have a flat side and a tapered side. And if you don't put the flat side against the restraining rod nut, then you can apply a point load to the flange and cause it to crack.
What's the difference between our PW restraint and our one-lock restraint?
Well, they both serve the same kind of purpose. They prevent a joint from separating, whether that joint's on an MJ pipe connection or whether it's on a push-on pipe-to-pipe connection. They prevent that joint from coming apart. The serrated clamps, the PW clamps, are serrations, and they use a mechanical force to bite the pipe through the compression of the gland across the pipe. The teeth biting into the circumference of the pipe are what holds it in place. The wedge action restraint is similar, except in the wedge action restraint, it is also used as the gland to form the seal between the mechanical joint and the pipe.
Can you use a PWP on ductile iron as well as PVC pipe?
We only recommend it in the small sizes. It's more difficult to get a bite on the pipe, on the ductile iron pipe, than the PVC. So we have a specific recommendation in up through 12-inch.
Okay. In your video, you mentioned that the restraining rod nuts should not be over-tightened. Why?
Well, if you over-tighten, if you tighten them too much, you can actually put more load on one side of the joint than the other. And that could, as the joint tries to separate, that could load one side more and perhaps cause a failure. But the other reason is it's better for the joint to actually engage itself with the restraint and take up the slack with no pre-tensioning on the bolts.
Okay, well that helps, thank you.